Okay, so let's move on to actually the next agenda item, which is very much, Rosina, you can't move away. No, you should stay with me. Actually, that the next agenda item is very much related to the one of the topic and we just discussed. It's actually sustainability or actually the durability in STAP terminology. So that then let me just open this for this is actually not necessarily the decision item. Actually, there is not a decision from the last council meeting that then for this, but I hear very clearly from this table that you are really interested in this topic. It's very important for us to continue to discuss that topic, and that's why we are here. And we have done two homework. One is actually that ask the staff to share their perspective and how they see the sustainability or durability. That's how you just hear from Rosina that what are the important thing from a staff point of view. But we have also done homework on our site, and then you may have seen that our information paper about sustainability, and then there I think that we have actually done the two homework in it, and the one is that which is actually related to the question asked at the last council meeting. The one is that and to confirm two things. The one is that yes, we have confirmed that all agencies working with us have broadly same definition of the sustainability, because one question, as I said, that the definition is a question or that a problem. And on that one, we confirmed that the definition itself is not an issue, that the agencies do have more or less the same definition of the sustainability. And we also did answer another question. Okay, what are the key elements, the key factors that help increase the sustainability? And you will find out that the 7 kind of common elements from that agencies working with us, that key elements to support and enhance the sustainability, which show up actually quite a very last page of our information paper. So and that's basically the homework we have done, and since the last council meeting. And I just wanna maybe reflect on what we found throughout this process, and what does it mean actually to the GEF's business, and thinking about what are those 7 key elements or the common elements. But also I hear today from Rosina that what the staff thinks about the key elements for the durability. So I'm just reflecting that how we have been acting on those key elements, and I just want to maybe share with you my own observation. In terms of the preparation, one key element to enhance the sustainability is a good preparation and very broad and the ownership and towards the project, and also the good capacity building. Then that broad-based and the upstream engagement, consultation and upstream engagement. And when we think about those elements of like I think that the program, particularly impact program, have been a great opportunity for us to really implement those key elements of the sustainability. As I mentioned in my opening, one beauty, the real value of doing those programs is that we were very much, we means not necessarily GEF that and implementing agencies together, we were very much on the ground to talk to the different ministers and the national and local government and the business sector, the CSOs, to really come up with a multi-stakeholder platform. And it has been really taxing work, but I believe that this is definitely one way to enhance that sustainability or durability of those and of the program we are actually proposing. So another important aspect is actually that how you identify the risks and how you want to avoid those risks. And on this one, actually, the Rosina told us that the yes impact program identified the risks, but we need to also come up with maybe a better way to how to really work on this. So we will continue to work on that. But I would just say when I think about that, our projects and the program, we have done we have already identified for some of the focal area like biodiversity and protected areas. It's very clearly the financial sustainability has been an issue, and that was actually pointed out by, I think, that the IO, so that when we do the project, we will incorporate those kind of risks. And the chemical is another area that the risk is definitely actually that identified as sustainability is really the key criteria for project to be selected. So we have actually acted on the several of those findings already, but then going forward, we will continue to work with staff and agencies to rigorously act on those kind of list of things that we will be doing. Another important thing that is mentioned by actually that found out through those homework is actually that how to engage, particularly that in the private sector. Today at the lunchtime, the Bob Watson made it absolutely clear that if we really want to have a higher impact, the role of the business is absolutely critical. And again, that on this one, throughout the GEF 7 programming direction, GEF 7 negotiation, I think we made it very clear the way to embed, to bring the private sector firmly in it at the beginning of the program is actually that we need a platform like an impact program, and that is actually one way that we are doing. And that for next session we will talk about the impact program, and I hope that our PFD policy and framework document, I think, identified very, very clearly what's the role of the private sector in each of the program. Today, this morning, we discussed the monitoring policy, and in addition to the several policy measures already taken at the last council meeting. So these kind of new policy measures definitely should help us enhance the monitor and enhance the sustainability. Another success could be the co-financing, that the finance is actually the found out as one of the factor to enhance the sustainability. And I was very happy to see that then under this work program, co-financing is actually achieved. Target co-finance was achieved despite of our anxiety that if we could make it or not. So with those kind of the observation, I think what I'm telling is that yes, that the staff gave us some very good guiding post, and then our own homework, actually the checking with the agencies that own that definition and they are finding about sustainability. We have quite a good list of that how to enhance the sustainability, and I think we have been acting on that, but we will continue to act on that. So that is actually our observation. But with that, I really would like to open the floor and to have a conversation, a discussion on this issue, and including that to discuss what's next. So let me stop here, and I would like to open the floor and hear from you. I actually, sorry, I forgot to mention one thing. The one thing which we have been really putting a lot of effort is actually that our the national dialogue and the country support program, as mentioned even today's morning. This window, this instrument is kind of providing such a great opportunity to engage directly with the countries and the government and the community that how to really have a to prepare the good program. So I think I just also want to mention it, and we need to make much better use of this country support program. So I see the Ben trying to come in.
Many thanks, Neriko, and thanks for watching my arm move there towards my flag and anticipating, so very good. Just to say thank you very much for that introduction, Naoko. I guess that what is clear to me is that there's a strong read across between the last item, as you quite clearly said as well, and the paper which was presented for this particular item. And the stat paper, obviously on durability, obviously has a lot of implications. And yeah, I note that obviously, maybe because of timing, there wasn't any mention of durability or the stat work within the paper that you presented for us now. That obviously suggests there's more work which is needed, which I think is what you are also saying. I think also just a couple of other points which is probably worth flagging. We also noted from the paper that it was unclear whether the GEF projects are any more or less sustainable than agencies' projects. That was left unclear, and it was useful to hear from Rosina that she said that from her expectation that a 60% success rate was actually quite good. Sustainability was a good reflection. So again, clearly pointing out that some more thinking is needed and what we mean here in terms of sustainability or durability, to maybe use that term. And then I think the final point is really in reflection to just say, obviously, that this is a very important area in terms of durability, particularly in terms of financial durability, obviously with respect for value for money for GEF resources. So just to wrap up, just to say, I think, yes, clearly important area of work and something which needs more work building on the STAT report we've just received. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Lauren, followed by Marjorie.
Thank you, and we would like to thank the Secretariat for putting this item on the agenda. We had requested this item on the agenda at the last meeting, and also for providing more analysis. We find this item very important, as you probably know, and we know that other council members are also very concerned. We also note that the MOPAN review identifies sustainability of outcomes as the greatest challenge in GEF projects, and that it rates the sustainability of results as unsatisfactory. We'll hear more about that during the lunch meeting tomorrow, but I would like to note that already. We're happy with the analysis. We're happy with the work that has been provided by the IEO and the work now that we've heard from the STAP. I think we are more looking for measures and a systematic way for the GEF to address the issue of sustainability, for example, in the design of projects and in the review of projects, to make sure that the projects are designed in a way that they will be sustainable or durable. So we would expect that the Secretariat come back to us with some clear recommendations on measures that the Council could adopt in the future. We will come with a suggestion for a concrete measure tomorrow when we'll be discussing the evaluation policy. We will be suggesting that the GEF conduct a few post-completion evaluations, which will enable us to look at the issue of sustainability or durability. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to call on Marjorie, followed by Conrad.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation. For us, sustainability or durability, as it was called by the STAP, is also a very important issue. And it was indeed also an element of intention in the MOPAN. And it's very good to hear that you've already taken actions to follow up on this. And we've seen that the STAP paper provides some, interesting suggestions and principles for securing durability, and we would like to hear how you're going to take these into account in your future work. And we think, although this is an element for information, it might be nice to have a conclusion reflecting the fact that you're working on this, and that we welcome this commitment, and that we would like to see you to continue working on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to call on Dr. Conrad, followed by Kojura.
Thank you very much. We also share the concerns of the previous speakers with regard to sustainability. This is certainly a key issue. It's certainly also linked to the question that we will discuss later tomorrow, I think, when we come to the semi-annual report of the evaluation unit, with regard to the question of scaling up. We feel that the document that has been submitted by the GEF on the sustainability, on further work on sustainability, that we appreciate very much, but we still think it is not enough conclusive with regard to its operational implications. And we would also like to see the Secretariat to come up with clearer and more binding conclusions as to the challenges of sustainability in line with the GEF 7 ambitions that really want to make a qualitative step in view of a transformation and generally attack the drivers of environmental degradation. And to make a link again to the STAP explanations and report that we have received in this regard, I would just like to mention that this the STAP concludes on the enhancing of impact, that enduring transformational change will require considerations of new stakeholders, new partnerships, and multi-stakeholder platforms. But it has not been precised what these new stakeholders and new partnerships are. And we also think that there is need for a clarification and for more clearer and binding explanations what this means in terms of operations to enhance multi-stakeholder implication. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to call on Kojura.
Just to echo what previous speakers have said, well, we are glad with the additional information that we are getting. We were very interested with what STAP has been presenting. But we also look forward to hearing what are the concrete conclusions that you're going to take to actually improve this issue for, let's say, the GEF 7 evaluation to have better results than we had at the last evaluation.
Thank you, Kojura. I want to call on Apana. Apana, followed by Adriana. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I would like to also congratulate STAP Chair on the report and also the proposal now being considered based on NAOCO's interventions and our proposal. For me, whether we would like to call it durability or sustainability, I would like two things to be taken into consideration, if possible, and for the consideration of the Council as a whole. One is that the recommendations emanating from STAP's report should not be dealt with selectively. My request would be that there should be a systematic listing of all the recommendations, suggestions, concerns which can be gleaned from this very excellent report, and we should have a clear feedback from Secretariat as to how each of them is being addressed or not addressed, or sort of postponed for a later date, or the problems that may be currently there to address those concerns or suggestions. That is one. The second, in sustainability, I would like that we may consider three aspects which can help us to act as a kind of filter to ensure sustainability is built into projects and programs. The first is what we also said in the morning. Our partners should be chosen on the basis of comparative advantage and core competence. That contributes to sustainability. If you have an agency that has been working in a particular field of biodiversity for a long time, and we choose them as the partner for a biodiversity project of GEF, it actually contributes to better grounding that project and taking it forward and making sure it is sustainable. Second is the involvement of the local community. I think this point has been stressed by our CSO colleagues in various interventions, and I do believe that we will get lasting benefits and impact, and also build in equity and inclusiveness if we are able to involve the local community in our projects and programs. And the third one will be the use of, shall I say, technology. I think as of now, we are not emphasizing the use of appropriate technology for enhancing the quality of our projects to the extent that we could. And here we would really look to the advice and guidance from staff as well as other experts that they can bring in to see how we can actually use technology to improve the sustainability of our projects, improve the benefits vis-a-vis the costs, and that may, again, these three features can be taken as a kind of a filter or a checklist when we look at our project proposals.
Adriana?
Sí, queremos nosotros enfatizar. We like to highlight that the focal areas are ready to implement projects and do so, given that in the country's participation during this process, we may guarantee or not sustainability of any activities that have started or supported by the GEF programs or projects. Therefore, we suggest that analyzing sustainability be done also with focal points, operational and political, so that performance of the different actors, of all of the partners, is basic. And in the case of agencies, it would be significant to review what the capability is and therefore bet on the sustainability and durability for these projects.
I just want to know if Rosina may want to come in for any of the comments.
Well, I mean, I think these are a number of really interesting suggestions. I mean, certainly by our next council meeting, you know, the IP thinking and development will be much further along. And so it may be quite appropriate to have a response of how STAP's recommendations are continuing to be incorporated and how and what are the implications for the project or program design, including moving towards monitoring indicators, which of course, you know, could not have been developed by this point. So I think that might be a quite reasonable thing that GEF-SEC and staff and IEO and council and the agencies can think about having back at the next council meeting. I think, you know, it's pretty clear that staff would be very happy to have a cross-agency dialogue or workshop on some of these terms and issues on innovation, on risk, on scaling, on theory of change, on monitoring evaluation. If you look in detail at the screens of each of the IPs, you'll see in all of those, there's an excellent example, and then there's some examples of where more could be done. And I actually think there could be quite a lot of interesting learning across the IPs that maybe, you know, a workshop would facilitate. These are very different impact programs, but the elements that we're looking for to judge them on are the same. And I think that having a common definition of what we mean by these terms is not bad. So I would like to offer to do that if that would be useful. And then maybe a third thought is council might want to think about whether or not it wants to have done in some way, shape, or form, and by whom, something on risk appetite for their own future deliberations and decisions. So I think, you know, reporting back in the next council meeting on how well or not we feel some of the staff principles are being incorporated is certainly worth doing. And if you want us to help convene something across the IPs, we'd be happy to do that too, to have some common terms and learn from each other about this very intense and rather quick process that has produced the IPs that, as you've noted, Naoko scored pretty well on the staff screening sheets.
Okay, so I think all flags are kind of called. So my take from this discussion is that yes, there remains an important homework to be addressed, and we get a quite rich paper with a suggestion, the study from the staff, which have not been really well digested yet from even secretariat and maybe for you. And I also understand that from Rosina, next few months we can work together to how to do this and those elements, important elements to be to be reflected in IP, the particularly child projects. And then we got this MOPAN study, so that just over the weekend, so that there are a lot of important new elements actually coming to this room, so that rather than trying to conclude something here, maybe for us to actually to digest and see that what I could present, what we could do together at the December Council. Is this more like how to take those elements in a more systematic way and mapping that and what we have been doing and what we should do. So that may be one way of thinking, and then how to utilize that upcoming, actually the GEF 8 is another, of course, opportunity that then always OPS 7 will come in a year time, and it's another opportunity for the council to think about that and what the new strategy may look like. But maybe for the next December council, I think we should be able to do something. So if it's okay, I will just think overnight and we'll come back to you a concrete proposal for you to agree on. That I mean, concrete proposal for December. That and the what kind of things we can do. So that with that, maybe we could, so another homework for me, but I could close this session, and we'll get back to you tomorrow. Is that agreeable? All right, I see a lot of nodding. Good. So now let us, I would just like to thank you, Rosina. Thank you. Great help. We will work together further. So we would like to move on to the next item, hopefully the last item of the day, which is the very exciting work program. Gustavo? Okay, Gustavo, you are on.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Naoko, for the opportunity. I will now introduce to you the 2019 work program for consideration of the GEF Council. You've heard over the past 2 days, the sorry state of the global environment. And I would like to start by saying that this work program is pretty much reflecting on the challenges that we have been facing at a global scale, and reflects the scientific consensus that the natural world remains under attack. You've heard over lunch, some of you or many of you, from the chair of IPBES, how the ecosystem, all the indicators are going in the opposite direction where we should be seeing them. 1 million species are now confirmed on the course to extinction. And the report makes clear that one of the major causes of nature's decline is related to how we use land and water, and how we engage in agriculture and food production. As Rosina showed also, the state of the natural world is no longer an issue for concern just for the environmental world, or the environmental community. The Global Risk Report of 2019 that was released by the World Economic Forum identifies 5 out of the 10 global risks for businesses as being environmentally related. The report concludes that biodiversity loss is affecting the health and socioeconomic development, with implications for well-being, productivity, and even regional security. National governments are also awakening to the importance of nature to social and economic development. The meeting that was held in Metz in France last month that focused on the state of biodiversity and how it relates to poverty and social inequality really called on governments to accelerate and intensify efforts to halt biodiversity loss, to value and to conserve and to restore and wisely use biodiversity, thereby maintaining ecosystem services and sustaining a healthy planet. It is within this context that the proposed work program was constituted and it's presented to Council today. The work program contains 7 programs or programmatic approaches, including 4 out of the 5 GEF 7 impact programs, along with 3 other major programs and 31 full-sized projects. The work program benefits 91 recipient countries, which represent 55% of all GEF eligible countries. And these numbers also include 30 least developed countries and 32 small island developing states. The work program aims to capture 6.6 billion in co-financing from other sources out of $865.9 million in GEF resources. The total investment mobilized, which is this new subset of co-financing that was agreed in GEF 7, in this work program that includes mix and UMix is 4.58 billion. Total expected co-financing to this date stands at 7.8 to 1, with investment mobilized for mix and UMix about 5.9 to 1. So these figures are well within the overall co-financing aspirations for GEF 7 as agreed during the replenishment process. And for this work program, the World Bank is responsible for 30% of the resources requested, followed by UNDP with approximately 24%, FAO follows with 16%, and UNEP with 14%. 10 other agencies are responsible for the remainder, 17% of the work program. You also heard from Rosina just now that STAP continues to perform its vital task of screening projects and programs for inclusion in the work program for their scientific and technical rationale. And we are pleased that just 1 in 30 projects that were screened by STAP for this work program merited major revision during later preparation. The impact programs represent 57% of the resources requested in the work program. 3 other programs are responsible for another 20% of the work program, with 31 standalone projects responsible for 23% of the remainder of the work program. We believe that the work program also contains a balanced distribution of resources considering the spread of STAR resources across GEF eligible countries and continents, with Africa representing the largest share of resources in this work program with about $284.6 million, followed by Latin America with close to $200 million. Projects and programs for Asia total $143.6 million. And we have small island developing states trailing immediately behind with $101.5 million, which is quite a significant participation of these countries in any work program. Eastern Europe and Central Asia are receiving $42.5 million. And finally, regional and global projects, which also include international waters, are receiving $93.9 million. We are now 25% into the GEF 7 cycle, so we are at the end of the first year. And we have 26% of the overall GEF 7 resources committed, meaning that we are right on top of where we should be in terms of resource programming at this moment in time. The work program includes 4 of the 5 GEF impact programs of GEF 7, which are food, land use, and restoration, And under the largest sustainable forest management banner, we have the Amazon Sustainable Landscapes Program, the Congo Basin Sustainable Landscapes Program, and the Dryland Forest Program. These collectively benefit 38 countries. The Food, Land Use, and Restoration Program is being designed to help bring transformation to the global food system, starting with commodities and crops with the strongest footprint on deforestation and environmental degradation. The program will be promoting sustainable food systems to reduce impact on natural habitat and also greenhouse gas emissions. As we heard over lunch, these are integrally related and need to be addressed in conjunction. And they also will address supply chains of major agricultural commodities, which are responsible for a very large share of deforestation in the tropics, in addition to also look into efforts to restore and reclaim degraded lands as a measure to avoid carving out additional natural habitat for food production. The IP is being led by the World Bank, with 8 participating agencies also engaged. It involves 18 countries at this stage in all continents, and the total that we have assigned for programming in this program is 213 million, or 54% of the resources that were allocated for this impact program in the GEF 7 strategies. This includes a global platform and coordination mechanism with key players in the sustainable agriculture space worldwide. The platform also includes the private sector, and FOLUR will expand the IAP, if you recall, the integrated approach pilot that we started in GEF 6, dealing with livestock, soy, and oil palm. We are now expanding to include also coffee, rice, wheat, corn, and cocoa, all with a significant footprint on the global environment. Moving quickly to the Sustainable Forest Management window, the Amazon Sustainable Landscapes Impact Program builds on the first phase that was represented by the Integrated Approach Pilot in GEF 6. The first one included 3 countries, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, while the IP now will extend the reach of the program to 7 out of the 9 countries of the region. And if you want to account for that in terms of a fraction of the entire basin, that involves 92% of the entire basin. And this is the first historical initiative that brings 92% of the region under a shared vision for ecological integrity of the entire biome by the governments in the region. The World Bank is also the lead agency for this IP, and it involves 7 other agencies. And we are requesting $88 million for this program. Likewise, the Congo Basin Sustainable Landscapes IP, which is being led by UN Environment and counts with 4 other agencies, it includes all 6 countries that form the basis, and they are coming together again with the same principle of looking at this region with a long-term vision of maintaining ecosystem integrity, and it's expected that the IP will directly benefit 7 million hectares of pristine forests, and 4 million hectares will be brought under sustainable management. This program is requesting $57 million. Finally, under the SFM banner, we have the Dryland Forest. These are very, very important because they are at a global scale home to 2 billion people and responsible for 44% of all global agricultural land. 1/4 of all the biodiversity hotspots recognized globally are also in dryland forests. The Drylands IP aims to bring 12 million hectares under sustainable use and avoid deforestation of 240 million hectares of high conservation value forests. This program is led by FAO, and it's supported by 3 other agencies, benefiting 11 countries. $95 million are being requested for this program. There are other 3 programmatic approaches in this work program: the Global Wildlife Program, the Islands Chemicals and Waste Program, and the Electric Mobility Program. Just going quickly through these, the Global Wildlife Program is requesting $82 million, and it's expected to bring $483 million in co-financing. It spans 13 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and includes 4 GEF agencies: UNDP, the World Bank, UN Environment, and World Wildlife Fund. The program's main components are the conservation of wildlife populations and habitat, promotion of wildlife-based economies, combating illegal wildlife trade, and reduce demand and disrupt illegal markets for wildlife products. The Islands Chemicals and Waste Program is comprised of 27 countries worldwide. For the first time, we have a global program for islands dealing with specific agenda, and it's also supported by a global coordination component that includes the private sector and also includes technical assistance. The program is requesting $61 million of GEF support, and we have 4 agencies with UN Environment in the lead. The program will directly eliminate 23,000 tons of chemicals and associated waste and avoid 180,000 tons as an indirect benefit or a co-benefit of plastics coming into the oceans. Finally, the electric mobility program, which is electric mobility is a top priority for the GEF 7 climate change mitigation strategy, addressing low carbon transport solutions, and in particular accelerating the expansion of electric mobility. IPCC has pointed out that there's only a short window that we have available in developing countries to transform the transport sector in developing countries to avoid a real carbon lock-in that would delay the transition to more renewable sources. The e-mobility program involves 17 countries. It's requesting $30 million in GEF resources, and it's aiming to support the rapid introduction of electric mobility, building the knowledge and outreach capacity developed by trailblazing initiatives developed by the International Environmental Energy Agency and UN Environment. And the e-mobility program includes countries in all continents and is expected to contribute to the reduction of 67 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. These are the expected results coming from the GEF 7 work program. It is expected to result on gains for the global environment across 8 of the 10 indicators that we have for GEF 7. Overall, the work program will deliver between 13% and 73% of each core indicator. And if considered again, that I mentioned before, we are completing 1 year into the 4 programming years of GEF 7. Most indicators are already achieving or surpassing the 25% mark. The blue bars here represent the first work program of GEF 7. If you recall, we have a relatively small work program in December of last year. The impact programs are expected to deliver a disproportionate set of results and on the indicators pertaining to terrestrial protected areas, area of land restored, landscapes with improved practices, and greenhouse gas emissions mitigated. While 15% of the overall STAR resources are being programmed through the IPs in this work program, they are collectively expected to deliver between 21 and 58% of the results across these 4 indicators. 3 other programs and the standalone projects complement the estimation of expected results. Finally, we have about over 15 million people that are expected to benefit directly from the work program. I would like to conclude my remarks not showing a beautiful animal like Rosina likes to do, but just going back to the beginning of my presentation, where I mentioned the challenging state of affairs of the global environment. And a couple of weeks ago, I came across this article in Science that contained quite a soothing metaphor for what the world is facing. And involves none other than the mighty Godzilla. And from time to time, Godzilla emerges from the depths of the ocean to punish humanity's greed and recklessness with the world around us. The authors actually calculated, they went to the trouble of watching every Godzilla movie and calculating how Godzilla's size and ferociousness in the movies has changed in connection with global stability trends. So as the world gets unstable, Godzilla increases in size and ferociousness and vice versa. Culminated with the last Godzilla in the latest movie, actually premiered this weekend. I went to see just to confirm the fact. Now we are in this situation. And the American writer Susan Sontag once wrote that a great enough disaster cancels all enmities and calls for collective action in the service of self-preservation. In the Science article, the authors reflect on the fact that Godzilla's near invincibility in the movie screen leads humanity to the realization that they must work together to defeat it. The monster is then more than a metaphor, it's actually a fable for all times and a lesson for all times. Now it's time for cooperation, meaning across countries, across disciplines, across sectors, across party lines, which is the only hope that we have to mitigating the dire existential threats that we face today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Gustavo and the team. Now I want to open the floor for your comments, observations, questions. Paula first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all. In our constituency, there was a request from last counseling that Angola could meet the impact program on the Congo Basin. Up to now, there is no reply, and we would like to know so that what will be the feedback, maybe what will be the decision of the counseling today. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. May I call on Peter, followed by Chaibol.
Thank you, Nauko, and thank you, Gustavo, for the presentation. I'm left somewhat speechless by the Godzilla analogy. I'm not quite sure. I might just leave that there. The notice for this meeting, as I mentioned earlier, said this was a landmark work programme, and indeed it is. I think it's landmark for two reasons. One, just the sheer size and the quantum of funds being committed, but also the actual the projected targets out of it. And I think you used the word disproportionate at one point, Gustavo. I think I'd use exponential, and that's something that we really have been very, very pleased to see. So we can happily support this ambitious programme. In particular, we're keen, given the region where my constituency lives, to see and to support the work focused on the 32 small island developing states, and in particular our Pacific partners. With that, strong support for the Islands programme to address the build-up of chemicals in SIDS environments, which will also contribute to the reduction of marine plastics, which ties nicely with the theme of our meetings yesterday, and we'd like to encourage more of that. In terms of the results, the co-financing figure, well above the overall 1 to 7 target, I think is reassuring. Colleagues will recall increasing incrementally our aspirational goal for co-finance is always a little bit fraught, but it's reassuring to see that already this early into the programme that we are well on track to meet the expectations that we set for GEF 7, which themselves built on 6 and 5 beforehand, etc. So very strong support for that. I note that there are no non-grant instrument projects in this work programme, but recognise that those will come through hopefully as soon as the next work programme. So again, commendation for the strong results. Just on the islands programme, I just wanted to put one thing down, and maybe if there was time in questions to come back to this. The ambition of the islands programme and the scale of it is commendable, but we just note that there are very significant differences in Caribbean countries compared to Pacific countries, both in terms of distance to one another, distance to markets, size and populations and the like. So we were just keen to get a sense of how within that programme, unpacking it, the actual delivery would be tailored to the specific country consequences, specific country circumstances of very different regions and very different countries within that. Commend also the strong engagement with private sector, which is threaded right through the work programme, and that was, I guess, contributes also to the co-financing. And commend also the impact programmes, which again, we had some discussions around during the replenishment and the extent to which we should divert resources there, and it's very reassuring to see in this first cut that they are contributing disproportionately, so I'm very, very keen to commend that. Last of all, and again relating back to discussions in the replenishment process, there were concerns about the reduction in the climate change focal area. Naoko, you led the charge by confidently predicting that you could achieve, you felt, greenhouse gas emissions reductions at greater scale with the impact programs, and if the projections are delivered, then this will have proved to have been a very wise decision by the Council to support you on that. So very supportive, happy to be here and be part of this landmark occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for your very kind words. May I call on Shaibo, followed by Kojura?
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to congratulate Gustavo for this very clear presentation. My constituency includes countries which have presented proposals regarding impact program, and we needed to mobilize a lot of energy and national actors and the agencies in order to prepare those proposals. But until now, we never heard back regarding the proposals we presented. So we are sort of doubtful regarding the impact we could feel. Neither the agencies nor the Secretariat have responded. So my question is, what is the message I can give to my colleagues? I think that we have to strengthen communication, whether it is during national dialogue or national meetings. The distribution of resources implies very strong discussions. We feel we are sort of blocked, and the national actors are being demobilized. So are you going to launch a second call for proposal or not? We'd like to have an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Kojura, followed by Adriana?
I think I was not the next on the speakers list, but well, I can take.
Sorry, I got it as the next. Do you want to skip it and I can go to, you can.
I just wanted to allow those who raised their flag a lot before me
Okay,
to
so you will
speak
come back,
before
all
me.
right. Thank you. May I call on Adriana then?
I want to wait a little bit because I have some changes about with my my other members.
Sure.
So let me wait.
So both of you just let us know when you are ready. Okay, now may I call on Lauren and followed by Stefan.
Thank you. I'll do my best then.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Secretariat for this work program and note that it's the largest in the history of the GEF, as you mentioned, and that we are here to approve 2 of the 3 impact programs. We also note that these will contribute to considerable results in terms of most of the indicators for GEF 7. We would very much appreciate if the Secretariat could enlighten us a little bit more on how the impact program submitted under this work program came about, how the lead agencies, for example, were chosen, how the child projects were selected and the agencies leading the child projects, how these IPs will function in practice, how they will be linked together, how the results will be aggregated, etc. So what we would suggest as a very concrete suggestion is that if the Secretariat could provide the Council with like a 2-pager note that describes the process of developing the IPs, I think that would be very useful. And I think it would echo also a bit the concerns that we just heard from Niger. We would also like to note that we are very pleased that African countries are the largest recipients in this work program. But we'd also like to note that there are several non-OECD DAC eligible countries that are receiving support. We've raised this issue several times before. We understand that it's okay in terms of the DAC rules, but we know that the OECD DAC Secretariat also does regular reviews of agencies, of organizations, and we would like to know when they will do a review of the GEF. At the last council meeting, we asked that the work program report in terms of expected results, not only on the 11 core indicators, but if it could also report on expected results for the sub-indicators. I think that would be very useful. I would like to also provide some very general comments on some programs, and we will come back also with some written comments following this meeting. On the Congo Basin Sustainable Forest Management Program, as you probably know, Norway is very much interested in this program because we are a big donor to the Central Africa Forest Initiative, CAFI. We would like to really make sure that there are good coordination mechanisms between this IP and the work that the CAFI is doing in the region. We also think that the risk analysis that is provided in the document is underestimating some risks, and we would suggest revising it. In terms of the Amazon IP, we believe that we understand that this is phase 2 of the program, and the phase 1 is still taking place. We would like to have some more information on what experience has come from phase 1, and more information on how the regional coordination is taking place between the different actors and the different stakeholders that should be involved, and also how the IP is linked to other initiatives such as RED+. In terms of the fuller impact program, we're a bit concerned that we feel that the child projects are just different projects that have been put together under this IP instead of being one IP with a common outcome or a common goal, and then that child projects have been developed based on that. So I think the integration between the child projects should be clearer, and also the expected outcomes are rather unclear and imprecise in our view. Finally, on the Islands program, we're very happy, like Australia mentioned, about this program. We think it's rather ambitious and addressing very many issues, so we hope it will be able to deliver. We also note that it will be strengthening national government's capacity to implement the BRS and the Minamata conventions, as well as SAICEM, and we would like to make sure that there's no overlap with the UNEP special program. And finally, we note that this will contribute also to the sub-indicator on marine litter, But we note that the target, which is 185,000 metric tons, as you mentioned, is higher than the total targets for the sub-indicator. So I was wondering if you will revise the total targets. And I think this just reflects how difficult it is in terms of monitoring of marine litter, and we see that in other programs as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I call on Stefan, followed by Vladislav.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are encouraged to see this programming for GEF 7. It takes full speed, that the funds are not sitting there idle. Results in the largest work program ever as far as volume. We also note, and with satisfaction, that the program is geographically well balanced, appreciate the positive developments regarding gender already in the project and program design. We also note the high importance given to biodiversity. We welcome the inclusion of some projects from our constituency in the work program. In general, we agree with most of the projects and programs in the work program. We will submit some written comments, specific ones, and would like to highlight some of the points that some of them have been made by colleagues before us. It's rather unclear to us how the countries and the lead agencies were selected, so there I believe there is a need for greater clarity and earlier information, if not involvement, of the Council. In retrospect, we would like to hear how the selection criteria have been applied. Similarly to our colleague from Angola, some of our constituency members have submitted interest of being included and are still waiting for a response, positive or negative, and maybe more than just a dry, you've not been included because you came too late or because you don't fit the criteria. I think they deserve some more precise and specific answers. One of the major concerns that we have with this work program, specifically the IPs, is the roles that are envisaged for non-GEF organizations. I know this is the concept behind the IPs, is to broaden the stakeholders that are part of the IPs. The question is then, what role do those organizations play? And we believe it is not appropriate if organizations that have not gone through the accreditation process, where we do not know exactly what kind of safeguards they have in place. And this is not questioning their capacity and ability in the specific field that they are in. This is more of a question of how do we handle responsibilities, including legal responsibilities, should ever anything go wrong. So we have difficulties with where we saw the roles that some of these organizations are to play in the impact programs, and in several of the impact programs there is a mention of other partner organizations will be included, and that remains very vague, who they are, what specific role they will play. We join Norway on the expected reporting on sub-indicators, and we look forward to getting involved early on in child projects. Allow us to have a few specific comments on some other projects, not the technical ones, but one is the e-mobility. There we have some concerns. E-mobility is a big thing. If we look around, there's billions of dollars that go into e-mobility development and promotion. So we still have difficulties to understand what is the specific role of the GEF in there. When it comes to analytical part, capacity building parts, we understand it. That's really needed. But if I read that key objectives are to de-risk investments in electric vehicle through demonstration projects, I question if this is specifically the best way of putting GEF money to the best use in the area of e-mobility, especially in countries where probably half of the population is still moving by foot, like they have done since hundreds of years. This is just to say, perhaps there the scope needs to be more than just retuned. I think it needs to be readjusted more broadly. On the token of involving non-GEF organizations, with all due respect for the excellent work that the International Energy Agency is doing, we're not sure that it is a GEF task to fund extension of their analytical work. When it comes to Folur IP, we are missing, of course, some of the largest commodity producing countries in the area of soy. The question there is, will there be a second round where you invite countries to participate? On the Global Wildlife Program, a program that we actually very much like, we have a few questions like, didn't see CITES in the listed stakeholders, and then the question also, what importance is giving to the demand for products from illegal wildlife trade. And the last one, Stockholm Convention. Under the Stockholm Convention, China is supposed to phase out HBCD already by 2021. Now the proposed project in the Chinese foam sector, which we support in general, is planned to take 5 years for implementation. So question, can it be speeded up? More technical and specific comments will follow, but just to reiterate after my long rattling, the major concern for us is the transparency of selection, and the second one is the role of non-GEF agencies in these projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I call on Vladislav, followed by Coletta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to express gratitude to the GEF-SEC to work they have done on the work program. It should be admitted that this work program is really big, and it's the first time it includes impact program, in particular for lure and sustainable forest management. Moreover, interesting to note that pool of stakeholders have been broadened, which given us an opportunity to involve different state bodies besides ministries of environment. Plus, more inclusion of private sector makes a possibility to combine economic transformation in line with environment-related matters. All mentioned was significantly elaborated by GEF-SEC, and I want to underline that you made a hard work and a big step forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind words. May I call on Coletta, followed by Karina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the GEF Secretariat for the progress made so far on work program. However, from my constituency, Eastern Africa, some countries have wished to go for sustainable cities and impact program. However, the presentation was silent on this, and yet we think we are left behind. And I would like to know the reason behind the delays, and also possible action in pipeline, and if possible, the time frame. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. May I call on Karina, followed by Marta.
Thank you. We welcome the comprehensive approach of the work program presented today, as it takes into account strategic interventions in multifocal areas and geographic location to achieve the greatest environmental benefits. However, to ensure timely overall program implementation, we would like to encourage the Secretariat to enhance the communication for window of opportunities to present project proposals for specific programs such as the IPs and the programmatic approaches, as well as the preparation processes. Specifically, this can be done by publishing the call for proposals for the specific programs at the GEF's website with clear timelines and requirements, to avoid implementation delays and other issues just arising by other council members. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to call on Maruta, followed by Marjorie. Maruta first.
Okay, gracias. Muchas gracias, señora presidenta, y
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Congratulations, Gustavo, for the excellent presentation of one of the largest programs of the GEF in terms of volume. As to the work program itself, our group would like to express its support and to thank you for the participation of some of our countries in the impact programs and the participation of GEF and the agencies in the global program of e-mobility. In terms of the impact programs, the Southern Constituency would like to underscore the importance of strengthening the communication mechanisms. They should be regular and with all countries in terms of the process and actions undertaken under GEF7. We think it's important to have feedback about the proposals that were submitted to GEF within the framework of the impact programs and the challenge that the Sustainable Cities program is facing. The informations that the focal points have received in terms of sustainable cities on June 30, the leader agency would have been defined for the program. That's vital for decision making within their national portfolios. As they prepare this type of project, experience has shown that we need to commit human and economic resources, undertake institutional arrangements and commitments at different levels of governments. The expectation is that those timelines will be complied with because the selection of the groups affects how resources are allocated. And if you give me a minute. I am going to go back 1 minute because I have a consultation here.
You may want to come back later. Or
yes, I'm sorry. We were doing some consultations.
Thank you. All right. No, I will call you later. Marjorie, followed by Stephanie.
Thank you. We also welcome this extensive work program. It's focused on environmentally vulnerable countries and on the impact programs. And we also note with appreciation the balanced approach of the program with respect to both the recipient countries and the focal areas and key and other programs. And as Stefan said, we also appreciate the fact that gender has been included in the initial design and of most of the projects and programs and will be reported upon. On some of the proposed programs, I'd like to make some maybe very general comments, but still important for us. On the Congo Sustainable Landscape Program, as Lawrence said, we would like to stress the cooperation with the CAFI, which we support as well. And more in general, I think it might be good to see whom to work with, because most of the programs are not isolated, of course, and there are many actors already in the field. And sometimes it seems that only larger ones are mentioned in the impact programs, but it's also important to work with people and stakeholders on the ground. On a more general note, we would also like to hear more on how the lead agencies have been chosen for the IPs. And I was also intrigued by the sentence that most programs and projects are intended on developing more robust engagement with the private sector. And could you elaborate also on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I call on Stephanie? And I also would like to know if either Kodura or Adriana are ready to come back. So Stephanie first.
Merci Madame la coprésidente.
Thank you. France thanks the Secretariat for this very ambitious program, which requires a lot of work with the focal points, agencies, and staff. We support this work program, but we'd like it to be more transparent regarding its very definition and the future definitions. So we support Norway's proposal to receive a short note which would explain how this program has been prepared, and particularly how countries and agencies have been selected. We support the various programs and impact programs, particularly Fuller program, which is in agreement with the French strategy to fight against imported products which promote deforestation. The Amazon program, we support also the same for the chemical products in seeds, and which deserve to be supported, fully supported. So we support all the impact programs. But I'd like to stress various points which should be taken into account in the future. Regarding the Congo Basin, as Norway has said, and we agree, since France also supports CAFI, it should be coordinated with the CAFI activities in order to avoid duplication. We'd like also to stress the importance of protected areas, which is mentioned in the impact program. And also, we should be more ambitious regarding the strengthening of capacities in those protected areas. Regarding the forest management program in drylands, we regret that Sahel is being represented only by Burkina Faso, while other countries of the same area in the savanna areas in Western Africa should also be included in this impact program, and I'm thinking more particularly to Niger. We regret that the Global Wildlife Program does not take into account the marine species, which are also threatened. And finally, the Child's Project and the e-mobility program, in our view, should take into account the local energy mix, which in certain cases are culpable of a lot of emissions. So we should take into account that risk in order to link it with the STAP recommendations. And we have to find answers in the Child's project. Thank you.
Thank you. Ida Kodura? Okay, ready.
So we also thank the Secretariat for this really impressive work program that you are presenting here today. And we generally welcome the proposed resource allocation across focal areas and regions. We also welcome the growth in volume and the proposed number of projects, and especially the growing number of projects occurring in both LDCs and SIDS, which is a highly positive development to us. We also welcome that the resources that are being requested by 14 of the 18 GEF agencies, which, with a view to what we have been discussing this morning, seems to be a good sign of a good distribution of the funds on the different agencies. We are noting that the share of resources for international waters has decreased, and would like to hear a bit more about if this is a trend or if this is just by the projects that have been chosen for this work program. As others, we are somehow concerned, or at least would like to learn a bit more about how the IPs have been chosen, and I was also a bit disturbed by the fact that a lot of the developing countries raised this issue. I thought it was a donor issue, but apparently it also has another side. So I think we need to work on this. And I think the proposal that Lauren just made about having a written note about how you got to these IPs, how the agencies were chosen, how the countries were chosen, and what have been the challenges for you, because, well, we are all aware that this is something new, and we wanted this in the GEF 7, but now we have to deal with it, and we have to do it properly in order not to compromise our work program. On the Congo Basin program, I completely support what Norway and I think also the Netherlands have been saying. On the Follower program, our colleagues felt that the challenges of conventional agricultural production systems vis-à-vis the transformation challenges towards ecologically sound intensification in both small farming and industrial farming systems should be addressed. But as usual, I will submit you a long list of comments from our colleagues. Maybe just to mention some projects that have got very positive marks, which is, for example, for biodiversity, the project in the Philippines, implementing the national framework on access and benefit sharing. On the chemicals and waste issue, there was a project in Colombia, strengthening national capacity to manage POPs. Or the colleagues also like very much the one in Costa Rica on the GEF Small Grants Program. So, and there was one on multifocal areas in Timor-Leste, I Can Adapt, which also got very good remarks from our colleagues. But the rest I will leave to the written comments.
Thank you, Kojura. Adriana, are you ready? Yeah.
First of all, I apologize for having had to interrupt before, but actually what we wish to mention here is important, and that is that the constituency of Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and all of their members, we welcome the work program, and we would like to express to GEF our sincerest thanks. Also, we wish to thank the Secretariat, the GEF Secretary, for its continuous support in developing some of the projects focused on complying with the Convention goals and thus obtaining global environmental benefits. We would also like to give these thanks, bearing in mind the approval by the Council of several projects in our constituency's countries, especially the regional project of sustainable Amazonian landscapes, where the 3 countries are included, in addition to Bolivia, Guyana, Peru, and Suriname, and where the main results are to protect biodiversity by favoring connectivity while promoting sustainable development in the Amazonian region. In addition, there are others that have to do with chemicals, marine ecosystems, the Small Grants Program, wildlife, and degraded lands. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I want to call on civil society, followed by Anna, Canada.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Naoko, for giving civil society the opportunity to take the floor. We welcome this work program. We support it, especially the incredible work carried out by Gustavo. I'm sorry, my voice is making echoes here. But in any case, the most important thing that we wish to see, and we have a long list of comments because it's, of course, quite extensive, but the CSO network, GEF CSO network, that is, represents all countries. And what we see, especially here, is the various mechanisms. And as a matter of fact, we agree with Stefan, Marta, and Stephanie, when they say that this network, that is part of GEF, and that represents civil society organizations and indigenous peoples, I think that you're not taking sufficient advantage of it so that we can truly give momentum to these type of impact programs. In other words, the Amazonian region, for instance, the 9 countries are represented here by the focal point for South America. And since there's no clear mechanism on how we can work with national operational focal points and the political focal points or with local groups, that makes you lose, that there's a loss of value there for you. And we wish to work with you in this procedure whereby you select those who will truly participate to see which will be the organizations and communities that will participate, because we can truly help because of the work we do on site. It is an ambitious program. We do support it fully because of the way it is structured. This is the first time we see an integration by region, at least in the case of the Amazonian region. The CSO representative is asking why Venezuela was excluded from this work in the area. It is a country that is not included. What's more, these issues plus the baselines that were used make us ask, how has civil society been taken into account, as well as local communities and indigenous peoples in the areas where projects are being carried out, to see if there's an aggregate value there, an added value there? How was the decision made so we can take it into account and support this process? We would like to leave with you in writing our position, because it is too long to explain it in detail here, but we want you to know that you can count on our support. We are a network that are in all the countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your support. May I call on Anna, followed by Jillian.
Thank you very much for presenting this very ambitious work program, which we support. First off, we'd like to echo the request that initially came from Norway for more clarity on how the impact programs and their child projects are selected, as well as how agencies are selected and how the impact programs will function in practice. We therefore support the calls for a short note responding to these issues. Like others, we are also pleased to note that all of the full-sized GEF projects in the work program are taking gender equality into consideration in their design, and that such a significant portion are also working to close associated gaps. But we'd like to take this opportunity to refer to the progress report on the GEF gender implementation strategy, as its analysis covers the projects, programs, and enabling activities included in this work program, as well as the work program from December 2018. We are happy to see the Secretariat following up to the report on the results of the gender equality tagging system discussed in the context of the GEF 7 results architecture. We have some specific comments and questions on the progress report, which we can share in writing. But in the meantime, we look forward to seeing continued progress being made in support of the policy, but would also encourage the Secretariat to include some analysis of the challenges that are being faced. There are many lessons to be learned from this type of analysis, and we hope that it will be included in future progress reports. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Gillian, followed by Antonio.
Thank you. The work program presented is very impressive, given its scope, the geographic distribution and types of projects, and we support it. With respect to the major projects, the e-mobility project and the GEF 7 Islands project is of particular importance, and both projects are commendable. It's assumed that all countries included in these projects are included based on their national priorities, consistent with the country-driven approach articulated several times at this meeting. Hence, there should be little concern about the inclusion of our country in a project. The e-mobility will increase the capacity of countries to address several issues, including sustainable transport and reduction of GHGs. With respect to the GEF Islands project, this is indeed a watershed project. If successful, should be replicated with a focus on other subjects that support GEBs. Several of the countries in the Caribbean constituency will be participating in this project. It is important to ensure that the project recognizes that the islands is not a one-size-fits-all. There are differences within the group, classified as SIDS, specific circumstances and specific needs from one sub-region to the next, and one individual country to the next. It's important that there is country ownership in implementation, which speaks to the issue of durability and sustainability going forward. We're hopeful that projects from countries which have chosen not to participate in this project based on their own national chemicals and waste management priorities will be favorably considered by the GEF. We welcome all opportunities for sharing of experiences and best practices among SIDS on issues related to the sound management of chemicals and waste. It is also important to ensure that civil society, indigenous people, and local communities be included in the projects as key actors to support implementation as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Antonio, followed by Yoshiko.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to express my appreciation to the Secretariat for the work it has carried out, and allow me to express on behalf of the 8 countries of the Central African Constituency that I humbly and with great honor I represent in this forum, to say that we express our support to the work program, and we truly express our thanks for this initiative. I would also like to emphasize that Central Africa is one of the regions in the world that is most important in the context of climate. High rainfall, its forestry cover, which has to do with carbon, and its exceptional diversity show us that tropical forests in Central Africa are of utmost importance. They include ecosystems of the Congo Basin, and they play an extremely important role for the global environment. They ensure multiple services for national economies, local communities, and the populations that depend on forests. In effect, our constituency welcomes the impact program on forestry landscape in the Congo Basin. We understand that this work program will be a historic milestone for our sub-region, not only because of the amounts allocated, over $57 million, but also because of co-financing foreseen to mobilize $387 million, that is $387 million of co-financing. Our hope is to generate advantages and global benefits for each dollar invested. This is also quite relevant. This work program, and especially the impact programs that are part of it, reflect GEF 7's ambition and GEF's vision for 2020. As for the Central African Constituency, we should mention that 6 countries have been selected for the impact program on landscape for the Congo Basin. 1 country, Burundi, was selected within the framework of the impact program for food systems, land management, and forestry restoration for LOR. Another country, RDC, that is the Democratic Republic of Congo, is also reflected in both programs I just mentioned, including the one on wildlife. My constituency's countries would like to associate themselves to those members of the Council who have spoken to congratulate the Secretariat, and we would like to thank Naoko and congratulate her for having reacted positively to our request and for the technical assistance she has provided us after the Council meeting held here in December, where we were able to organize a workshop on strengthening, which we held, as a matter of fact, in February, which we held in Libreville in February 2019 to express our intentions within the framework of the impact program. In that workshop, we were able to develop a roadmap to find out about progress, and it is perfectly synchronized with the goals that we set for ourselves. We encourage the implementing agencies that have expressed an interest in working with us, as we were able to see in our discussions, especially those centered on our program, that they're working with us in this ambitious program for our subregion. We would also like to thank the donors for being so generous in their contribution. And we would like to say that with the present work program for the Congo Basin, we should try to prevent a duplication of efforts with the initiative for Central African Forest, CAFI, and not to have a duplication with IPs, because the IPs that are trying to strengthen the impact program, always bearing in mind that the CAFI program has goals in their IPs, and this has allowed the Congo Basin to visualize the drivers of deforestation as well as future trends. This takes advantage of the efforts through which the present program will allow us to reorient and promote synergies with the program that I just mentioned. We are aware of the responsibility we have and of the trust that members of Council have deposited in us, which we take up, and we hope to correspond in a satisfactory fashion to this trust that has been given to us. The great challenge of this work program must become real through these programs and projects that are being carried out with GEF, with our partners, and that we have to carry out in our different countries. We are, of course, at your disposal for anything you may need from us. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Yoshiko, followed by Ben.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We welcome the ambitious list of projects that seek to promote synergies across various conventions and involving various regions and multiple stakeholders, which seems to be in line with GEF's 7 objectives, so we're generally supportive of this list. On co-financing, we welcome the increase beyond GEF's 7 aspirations and just wanted to seek clarification whether this is due to the rising share of the integrated programs. Like others, we also concur on the need for transparency on how these projects and countries were selected, and we reiterate Norway's comments about the questions on inclusions of countries that are off the DAC list. We also seek provision of transparency as these projects are developed and conducted. The document points out clearly the intention of the involvement of new and diverse set of stakeholders for all of these projects. We pretty much support the issues raised by Switzerland, so we won't reiterate them here, but we would like to emphasize the importance of increased disclosure on these stakeholders as these are developed in progress reports. For such projects, it may be a good idea to provide information periodically on these stakeholders in a table similar to one shown in Annex A in Council documents. We also would like to emphasize the importance to ensure a balanced representation of such stakeholders in these projects. And if we still have questions remaining on projects after this session, we will send them in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Ben, followed by Komlan.
Many thanks, Naoko, and also many thanks to Gustavo for a very clear presentation. The UK would like to join others in celebrating the largest work programme in the history of the GEF. And the UK is very happy to see the GEF taking forward the impact programmes which were established under GEF 7. We note the STAP's largely positive view on the impact programmes, and also the strong support for integrated multi-sector programmes being the right way to go by the IPBES chair at our lunchtime session. So it's useful to note that. Of course, as a new direction, it's important that these develop and work effectively in a transparent manner in relation to what others have said. But we're particularly pleased to see these IPs delivering a large share of results. In short, we support the work programme. However, just to support Norway's point in raising concerns about graduating countries, which obviously was an issue under GEF 7, and it remains an issue. So it will be useful to see how this can be taken forward in the longer term to resolve this particular concern. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Komlan, followed by Apana.
Merci.
Thank you. We'd like to congratulate the Secretariat for this program, this work program, which is really impressive and ambitious. Thank you, Gustavo, for the quality of your presentation. We have a work program here that is really at the same size as the monster, so I think we should be able to beat this monster. With respect to my constituency and the countries in my constituencies, we should like to applaud this program, all of this program. We should like to support Norway as to the need to avail ourselves and to make available all the necessary information, especially with respect to projects and those that have been selected with respect to the impact program. We noticed that there was no work program for the lead agencies, and we hope that this will be done in real time for the lead agencies so that we may be able to try to participate in this program with respect to funding to be received. We should like to make this comment as well with respect to those projects which have already been chosen and which are part and parcel of the impact program or work program. Some of our countries were part of the competition process, and it would be important to have some feedback as to those countries or as to the gaps we have perhaps in our projects which are submitted in order for us to improve these projects. Of course, some projects are fine and perfect and have no discrepancies or shortfalls, but those projects that may have some shortfalls, it would be good for those copies to be aware of where they should make improvements so that they may present new projects for the impact impact program rather, and in order therefore for us to have these projects implemented and have funding. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Apana, followed by Brian.
So, thank you and for this opportunity to speak on what is being touted as the largest ever work program in the history of GEF. So certainly a huge effort has been put in by the GEF Secretariat and the implementing agencies, and no doubt the recipient countries to bring us to this stage, and I think that is a good omen of the increasing cooperation and increasing efficiency being shown in the GEF Secretariat, because after all, we have been speaking about the need for having a more impactful program. Already GEF is one of the most successful among many programs and many funds that are available for countries needing to go ahead with combating, for example, climate change or environmental degradation and meeting their nationally determined commitments. At the same time, I also would like to point out that the June work program is one that is able to reflect a kind of a concentration. So you can see that almost 57% of the program is on impact programs, the financing. Almost 50%, 48.8% to be precise, is in the biodiversity area. And if we look at co-financing, most of the co-financing is coming from the government agencies and the GEF agencies. And I would like to point out that those GEF agencies, which are MDBs, are basically lending. So essentially that is also like a government contribution, because at the end of the day, these recipients would be repaying the borrowings from the MDB. So I would like that as we move forward and we devise our programs for the next GEF Council meetings, we should try to set right this balance and ensure that all focal areas get adequate attention. I spoke about the geographical dispersion. I think that a good job has been done, particularly by devising programs for the small island states. I think this is, as our colleague from Jamaica mentioned, it is a watershed moment, and we look forward to more work on regional programs that can synergize action by different players. We are also, insofar as our constituency is concerned, feeling a little the experience with the outcome for our constituency in getting proposals processed, approved, has been rather low. The experience has been rather poor, and somehow today's meeting almost tempts me to say, "I told you so." Because when we did debate the impact programs way back during the replenishments, I remember in Brasilia, and I had pointed out the need to maintain national ownership and, dare I say, national control over the GEF program. Whereas what we are seeing by the implementation of the impact programs, though undoubtedly they have been projected to give a largest share of the environmental benefits, but we do see that possibly countries are feeling, recipients are feeling, national authorities are finding themselves more disempowered than they were before. This is not a good trend, and I do believe that the answer or the response should be more communication, perhaps better coordination. There has been a need, has been a call for greater transparency. I think more clarity on how best to access the program, how not to feel left out, how not to feel a bit in the fog, a bit in the dark, would be extremely useful. And I know that GEF Secretariat is capable of coming up to this challenge, because the Secretariat has been extremely proactive in helping countries. I think we just heard from Equatorial Guinea, and India, my own country, also have experienced the proactiveness of the Secretariat in helping countries to understand how GEF 7 will move forward. So I believe that more communication will be useful, will help us to restore balance in the work program. It will also help countries to learn. They will understand why their projects have been rejected. Today they have some vague reasons which they are not able to fully comprehend. So I believe a better understanding from the OFPs will give you better quality projects, which you will be then able to approve. So overall, the efficiency of the programmatic part of GEF will improve. I also would like to echo what has been said about the use of other agencies which are not GEF accredited implementing agencies, because our constituency has been agitating for quite some time for national agencies to be allowed to access GEF funds. But if national agencies are not to be permitted direct access, then we should have a little more clarity on who are these other agencies apart from the 18 agencies that we are aware of who are being involved in the projects. What would be their role? How have they been empaneled and chosen? That would help countries, I believe, to better formulate their proposals and help GEF Secretariat with better proposals that you can easily clear. And these, therefore, though I laud the Secretariat on the effort and I'm sure the incredible effort that must have gone into this work program, I believe that there is some room for making the process more efficient, more transparent, and more, let us say, consultative. We will be extremely happy to see that happen. Thank you.
May I call on Brian, followed by Ari?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gustavo, the GEF Secretariat, the implementing agencies, and the recipient countries for developing this second work program of GEF 7. This is an ambitious work plan with a large overall envelope, an ambitious co-financing target, and is clearly intended to make a significant contribution towards the global environmental benefits envisioned for GEF 7. We have some broad comments as well as more specific comments on several projects and programs. Most broadly, we note the inclusion of efforts to reduce plastic pollution across several projects and one program. The United States shares the concern about the impacts of plastic pollution on the environment and supports the overall approach to plastics in this work program, which seeks solutions to plastic pollution within solid waste management. We also think it's important that the GEF remain attentive to its central mandates and not diversify its interventions beyond what it can effectively manage. For example, significant efforts across the program implementing sustainable low and non-chemical development in SIDS, also known as islands, and its child projects appears directed at advancing new national efforts to ban single-use plastic products. This effort does not correspond to any explicit obligation under the Stockholm Convention or any other convention which the GEF serves as financial mechanism. The Stockholm Convention does not address banning products that do not contain substances that are controlled by the convention. Similarly, no other convention which the GEF serves as a financial mechanism, or SICEM, addresses single-use plastic products as such. Our concerns along these lines also extend to the full-sized project known as Scaling Up Investment and Technology Transfer to Facilitate Capacity Strengthening and Technical Assistance for the Implementation of Stockholm and Minamata Conventions in African LDCs. We are also interested in further understanding the implications of the recent amendment to the Basel Convention on this islands program. I'm referring to the Basel Amendment, which will impact the recycling and waste sectors of the countries involved. With respect to the global program to support countries with the shift to electric mobility, we want to ensure that energy storage investments are sustainably sourced and address critical mineral supply chain risks and end-of-life considerations. On the Global Wildlife Program, we are broadly supportive of this program and its focus on developing sustainable wildlife tourism industries as a tool to combat illegal wildlife trade. We encourage the Global Wildlife Program to work closely with the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which you know as CITES, and other MEAs as appropriate to plan and implement these projects. On the Technology Needs Assessment Project Phase 4, we think this project is well aligned to support the technology mechanism and the emphasis on national planning and implementation. We welcome the continued collaboration between the GEF and Climate Technology Center and Network and encourage the GEF to continue to explore how technology action plans and technology needs assessments relate to nationally determined contributions and the national adaptation planning process. In addition to submitting additional comments on several programs and projects, we request that the Secretariat circulate the CEO endorsement request and the final project documents to the Council for review prior to CEO endorsement of certain projects. These include the 5 child projects associated with the program entitled Implementing Sustainable Low and Non-Chemical Development in SIDS, the child projects associated with the Food Systems, Land Use, and Restoration Impact Program occurring in Guatemala and Ukraine, the child project associated with the Sustainable Forest Management Impact Program on dryland sustainable landscapes occurring in Namibia, the child projects associated with the Amazon Sustainable Landscapes Program, Phase 2, occurring in Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil, the implementing the National Framework on Access and Benefit Sharing of Genetic Resources and Associated Traditional Knowledge that takes place in the Philippines, the 7th operational phase of the GEF Small Grants Program in Brazil, the strengthening the adaptive capacity, resilience, and biodiversity conservation ability of fisheries and aquaculture-dependent livelihoods in Timor-Leste project, and the project entitled Scaling Up Investment and Technology Transfer to Facilitate Capacity Strengthening and Technical Assistance for the Implementation of Stockholm and Minamata Conventions in African LDCs. In addition, the United States requests that the following 2 statements be reflected in the Council meeting highlights. The United States, in light of its policies for certain development projects in countries whose governments are not addressing trafficking in persons and whose governments do not have in place a functioning and transparent military audit, and in light of its policies related to development projects in Zimbabwe, opposes the following projects and therefore does not join a Council decision that would support the Food Systems, Land Use, and Restorations Impact Program in China and Burundi, the Congo Basin Sustainable Landscapes Impact Program in the Republic of the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon, implementing sustainable low and non-chemical development in SIDS in Comoros, regional capacity building of COMESA member states in Eastern and Southern Africa for enhanced transparency in climate change monitoring, reporting, and verification as defined in the Paris Agreement in Comoros and Eritrea, scaling up investment and technology transfer to facilitate capacity strengthening and technical assistance for the implementation of Stockholm and Minamata Conventions in African LDCs in Mauritania, improvement of the environmental performance of the foam sector, phase out and management of HBCD in China, fostering water and environmental security in the Ma and Neunka transboundary river basins and related coastal areas in Laos, and umbrella program for preparation of national communications and biennial update reports to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change in Burundi, Mauritania, and South Sudan. The United States, in light of its policies related to development projects in Belarus, abstains from participating in the decision on the following project: Sustainable Energy Scale-Up in Belarus. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Ari, followed by Marta?
Thank you. I would just make very short. Our constituency generally supports the work program, and thank you, Secretariat, for the very nice, one of the very nice presentation we had. Our constituency will also echo the colleagues raised the selection of agencies and countries, and then also we would like to receive the notes initiated by Lauren at the very beginning intervention. Some specific requests from us would be the Global World Wildlife Program, and then we really hope the Global World Wildlife Program is including fish and birds as well, because what I can see here is all about mammals, and then of course mammals are important, but there are other species, and then particularly during the lunchtime we talked about 1 million species extinction, so I really hope that is included. And then also, as raised by some few colleagues, I really hope it is included. It is going to be sites and other specific MEAs into the implementation and coordination as well. And one question is, if I read it correct, can we understand wildlife-based economy as sustainable legal wildlife trade? Because the wildlife-based economy is something personally I have less knowledge on. Thank you. Oh, sorry. And the last point is from almost all of the countries in my constituency asked me to say we really hope to see sustainable cities impact program, and then it is really the one of the way we don't want that the GEF portfolio is weakening in this part. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, finally, Marta, please come back.
Gracias, Presidenta, por permitir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to allow me to take the floor again. In regard to recent interventions of some countries, our constituency of the Southern Cone would like to express something that really came out in last council, specifically point out that because GEF is the financial mechanisms for environmental agencies, we're subject to approval of projects within the framework of GEF, as well as receiving countries. So when the Secretariat has expressed the GDP indicator is part of the STARC, which has given less appropriation of resources for many of the countries in the region, and trying to attempt to appropriate difference like the per capita GDP will leave us with challenges that our countries have in mitigation and adaptation to climate change, sustainable biodiversity, land degradation, and others. So this really is going counter the policies, the global policies of GEF. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So all flags are now knocked down. So let me ask Gustavo to come back to you with our the response.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the very useful comments. Thank you for the overwhelming support that we heard for the work program, and we are very grateful that all these comments are coming forward, because they're important to us, they're important to the agencies, and they need to be taken into account in the project preparation phase of these projects that you've seen. I will address the many questions, and I'll try to address them in no particular order as they came to us. So just a very easy one. I think Peter asked about the NGI. So the non-grant instruments window, if you recall, in December council meeting, we've approved an operational guidance to the NGI in GEF 7 that built on the existing policy and frameworks. In that we had received requests from council on a couple of items that we needed to produce, which are now done. And we expect to send a call for proposals. This is also a competitive window, a call for proposals actually by the end of this week, and looking forward to hopefully having capable projects before you for the December council meeting. So this is going to go out to all agencies and focal points in a very short period of time. In relation to this question about Africa and whether there was enough information, of course we can always have oversights or we can always improve, but I would like to just highlight a few points that perhaps run against this grain, which is number one, Africa was the largest beneficiary of resources in this work program. It accumulated at least 3 major programs, impact programs. We have a presentation from Food, Land Use and Agriculture. We had all the resources for the Congo Basin program, all the 6 countries. And by the way, the 6 countries that would be beneficiaries of the Congo Basin program was set in the replenishment process. So it's not, it was not a choice that we had to expand it to include other countries in this. And we also have the Global Wildlife Program, also in Africa in particular. The Drylands program is almost half of it is in Africa. So there was a lot of engagement and a lot of upstream interest from countries in joining these programs. So there might be oversights that we don't know about, but I think we did the best we could do, and we hope to improve as we go forward. I don't know if you want me to talk about the process, or you. Okay, so I will at the end of these questions, I will address the question of how we went through the process of selecting agencies and expressions of interest and communicating with countries the opportunity. And as per your request, we'll give you a detailed note tomorrow for your information. I will go through this before we end this session, just to give you a bit of but I'll leave it to the end. There were questions about CAFI, and for many of you, how can we join on the Congo Basin and CAFI? Actually, there are active discussions, and actually we are participating. CAFI is participating in the steering committee that's preparing the regional component of the global project, so there's an active participation. There is co-funding coming from certain child projects in the region, so they are fully integrated in the alliance of institutions that are part of that. Let me now talk a little bit about the role of stakeholders and organizations, particularly in these global and regional components that Stefan and many of you raised. So, and whether there is an issue associated with the fact that they are not accredited agencies. I think it's important to note that that accredited agencies have a very specific function, which is to serve as the GEF's fiduciary entity in managing the GEF resources and designing the initiative, and also in selecting and bringing executing partners, because the agency themselves, actually ideally, the implementing agency should not execute the project. And this is, sometimes this is not possible, because the whole idea is to bring other partners to the table, use as much as we can the intellectual, technical, and financial resources that exist in a particular field, in a particular discipline, in a particular team. And the attempt that we have now with these programmatic approaches, and more recently with the IPs and with the IAPs before them, is to use these regional and global platforms as real coalition builders. And we heard a lot about are you engaging with so-and-so? How is this other coalition actually interacting? And the ability that we have through these global platforms and regional platforms to bring these players to play a role, I think is very important. The actual accreditation standards that exist is to the agency, the implementing agency, to oversee. They are responsible to really looking for that everything that goes downstream into the execution arrangements will follow their standards, their guidelines, their safeguards, and the fiduciary standards that come with that supervisory role. So they're very different roles that they play. The ability that we may have through these arrangements to use these entities to support the delivery of, particularly on the transformation ambition that we have for these programs, they may become quite vital because they are not just individual entities for the most part. They are actually representing alliances and coalitions in themselves. Each one of them comes with partner entities that have capillarity across that field in many of the regions that we operate. So this, the theory, and again, the theory will need to be put to the test and they will need to be assessed. The idea is that the ambition that we have here goes way beyond a single agency or even a collection of agencies that we have in our system to expand to specialized entities that have and they can make contributions, particularly technically, financially, to the execution of these projects and programs. Let me go through, where is my, okay. There were a few questions or many questions on the e-mobility program and why these countries. Well, first of all, e-mobility is one of the priorities in the GEF 7 climate change mitigation strategy that was approved in the GEF 7 replenishment process. And the least developed countries and the developing countries in general, they are the ones that are usually left behind from investments in e-mobility. And because of that perverse situation or perverse incentive, they are not really able to really jumpstart their ambition that is reflected in NDCs. And actually, we looked into how countries prioritize in their NDCs their engagement on e-mobility and on transport in general. And all these countries do prioritize transport and particularly e-mobility in their mitigation policies. So they are eligible to those resources. They are willing to put their star allocations into that. They fit the criteria. And in these countries, and SIDS in particular, transport is often the first or the second emission source for greenhouse gas emissions. So it is also a window of opportunity to make strides there. Just to give you a parallel, many years ago, GEF has funded an initiative. I don't know if, how many of you were here, that used to be around fuel efficient standards. And this actually reached eventually 70 countries and had a tremendous trailblazing entry point into changing these standards in fuel efficiency. And the e-mobility approach here follows more or less the same model, and hopefully it starts with dealing with 2 or 3 wheeled vehicles that are already being used and trying to fast track the phasing off of very polluting, including for health issues, air pollution, phasing off diesel-based vehicles and other combustion-based vehicles. As they age in developing countries, they tend to stay on the road for much longer. So this is the theory behind the e-mobility program and how these countries came together. And we looked into criteria, and actually there were countries that did not make it because they were not sufficiently committed to that objective. I think there was a question about what is the International Energy Agency providing. Actually, they, in our estimation, not ours, but also the agency responsible for the program, is the top knowledge provider in this idea, but it can only offer at this stage this kinds of services and technical assistance to OECD countries. And frankly, they don't have the capacity and the ability and the money to extend those services to least developed countries and developing countries in general. So this is a way to enable them, and this would come at a much lower cost than having to develop that capacity, just providing resource for them to deploy those technical services. Let's see what else. Well, there were many interesting suggestions also on that front that we'll take and the agencies will take in project preparation on the e-mobility program. I think there's a lot of attention to that, and I'm sure they heard all of you, and we'll take that into account in the preparation. CITES in the Global Wildlife Program. Actually, CITES is a member of the program steering committee of the Global Wildlife Program. There are 3 child projects, one for South Africa, Chad, and Madagascar, that are working directly with CITES. And CITES is benefiting from all the projects because the theme is relevant to their agenda as well. So it's a two-way street there. So that's well underway. Okay. So the question about REDD+ in the Amazon program, I forgot exactly who brought it up. I think it was Norway. Brazil, Colombia, and Peru are already supporting REDD+ in the phase 1 in the integrated approach pilot. In phase 2, we will encourage additional countries that are coming into the program to support REDD+. So that's well within the scope of the program. There was a question about the lessons learned. So phase 1 lessons are being incorporated into the design, both of the regional platform as well as in the child projects for this phase 2. And that's, of course, very well understood. And the regional coordination platform is already reaching out to other donors that are present in the region, including Norway is a co-financier of a couple of child projects, as well as Germany. So, and we also heard, Stephanie, you there? We heard this yesterday morning that France may be also joining in some capacity through French Guiana in the scope of that program. So that's very much welcome. Oh yes, cities program, right? As we explained, and actually we sent note to all focal points and agencies that we weren't able to receive a lead agency proposal that fit squarely with the criteria that were set in the GEF 7 strategy, and also that built on the lessons learned from the IAP in the Sustainable Cities, the first phase. And the idea here is that we need to learn from that experience in trying to build child projects that are really part of the same family of results delivery that we are seeking for in the integrated pilot impact programs now, and unfortunately that wasn't the case. So we reopened to every agency the ability to submit a proposal for a lead agency. This was opened a month ago, or a little over a month ago, and just this past Friday we received 2 proposals from 2 agencies, and unfortunately this week we don't have any time to look into those, but hopefully by next week we'll have an idea whether the proposals are indeed fitting and which one we can work with. And we'll send up a call for proposals. This leads me to the second question that we received. Will there be second calls for proposals of expressions of interest? Yes, there will be for the cities program, as I just mentioned. For FOLUR, as I described, we spent 53% of the resources allocated in full work. But we received more expressions of interest that did not fit the criteria, and this is a competitive process, if you all recall the notion, and intended to deliver disproportionate results in the GEF 7 results framework. And we hope that several countries that did not submit expressions of interest because they weren't prepared by the time that the deadline was set will come forward. We know, for instance, that there is interest, and we received informal expressions of interest from 2 countries in South America that are key to the soy issue. So there was a question about where is soy in this work. And by the way, soy is one of the commodities together with beef that's already under implementation as part of the integrated approach pilot that we have in GEF 6. That's came to be known now as the Good Growth Partnership that involves several agencies led by UNDP. So that's to come as well. And we received a question on the results framework and sub-indicators. So this has been, this is not the first time that we hear this, and we will do our best to track sub-indicators. But the caveat is that we have not set, and I think it's very difficult to set targets for sub-indicators because they're going to be hard to aggregate up to the core indicators that were set in the GEF 7 framework. And it's very difficult to anticipate how is that going to add up. But to the extent that we can, and to the extent that we can stimulate agencies and countries to report on these co-benefits and the sub-indicators, we'll do so. To the question about, and that leads me to the question about the Islands Program and plastics ban. So that co-benefit is not being directly funded by the project. This comes from co-benefits that are associated with the waste management part of our investments, and that results in certain amount of plastic not being released into the environment, and those estimations are being made available as part of the project design. So I think, and I apologize if I left any specific questions out, but all of them are registered, and they will, and we also expect your written comments to come. And I will just go very quickly over a summary of the rollout process that we employed for the GEF 7 impact programs. So the timelines and milestones were the following. In June, of course, of 2018, we concluded the replenishment process. And in July, we notified all the agencies and all the focal points of the process for operationalize the IAPs in line with the guidelines that are included in the GEF 7 replenishment documents. So, you know, we can point to where in the replenishment document, in the note that we're going to send to you, these guidelines reside. A month later in August, we prepared and issued to the agencies and to all countries, number one, a guidance note on the operationalization of the IP, and second, the criteria in terms of reference for lead agencies. In September, the GEFSEC and agencies discussed a process and steps to lead for IP agency selection. We held a day-long, during an agency retreat, meeting with all the agencies that were interested in taking on a lead agency role in addition to others. In this, there was other players in presence, such as the IO, such as STAP. And GEFSEC requested, after the presentations by these agencies that were interested, to follow up with a formal proposal that detailed their interest in line with the criteria in terms of reference. In October, a month later, we received and reviewed the proposals with the agencies using a standard scoring system that was based on the criteria in terms of reference. and we held further consultations with the agencies when we felt it necessary to clarify a point or another. And the process of selection was completed for FOLUR and for the 3 impact programs of the Sustainable Forest Management Program, and we announced this to everyone again in the system. The selection of the lead agency in that process was deferred, as I described. In November, the GEF-7 and the selected lead agencies finalized an issue and issued a call for expressions of interest to all focal points on the impact programs. So this was sent in November. It was set January 31st, a deadline for submission of expressions of interest by countries. And in February, the GEF Secretariat and the lead agencies convened committees to review and assess the expressions of interest from each IP, and the committees included representation from the lead agency, from staff, from the GEF Secretariat, and an external expert. The committees recommended cohorts of countries, and GEF-7 notified countries accordingly. And this process was intended not as a proposal, but as an expression of interest from countries that should have just basic details that we could use to say, does this country fit and what they want to do fit with the criteria for delivering results at scale in an impact program? And if they did, then we communicated back to the country and said, well, I think you should continue working on another proposal leading to a child project with your chosen agency. Those that did not fit the criteria were likewise informed. We held also a technical workshop convened by the lead agencies and ourselves to discuss the substance and the process for drafting programmatic framework documents that you have in the work program. This was in February again. In March, there was the preparation and drafting of PFDs by the lead agencies with inputs from child project agencies through their concepts that were submitted for the selected countries. A month later, in April, the submission of completed programmatic framework documents were deposited in GEF-SEC for review, like we review every project that comes to us, and for technical clearance. So we did the review and issued the technical clearance of these 4 PFDs. In May of 2019, the PFDs for FOLUR and SFM were included for your consideration here today. Yes, so there was no decision on the lead agency for Sustainable Cities IP, and therefore there was the issuing of another call for expressions of interest. Countries were notified of the delay on the cities program, and they were notified that the expressions of interest for that they were already submitted, they would be honored, but other countries could also submit for consideration, hopefully by the next work program. In June, there was a deadline for agencies to submit proposals for a lead of sustainable cities. And as I mentioned, they are now in our possession and will be analyzed. And there are other details on how we did it, but I think this should give you a broad view on how we undertook this process. Thank you.
Thank you. We will anyway distribute this timeline, but also with attachment of that what exactly actually the issue to sent to OFPs as well as agencies. But the important point in my mind is that this is not timeline, so that the operational guideline was already included in GEF-7, the programming document, so that it was, we had a heated discussion about the demarcation, division of labor, but that an agencies, the GEF-SEC and the countries, and it was all spelled out that based on the negotiation, then that based on that the guideline, that we actually roll out this process, and that each of the process, the country, in this case, all OFPs, that and all OFPs and the agencies did receive a very detailed note about either timeline or selection criteria of the agencies or selection criteria of the countries, so that then it, from our point of view, we have done everything possible, but I'm quite saddened to hear that it seems there are several either miscommunication or that then some maybe that the line was kind of broken. That then we need to know that then what then exactly happened. But then the goal is that then full transparency in terms of communication, but also the very professional selection based on those criteria in terms of country as well as a lead agency. So, but anyway, we will actually, we already have this timeline kind of expecting this kind of question will come, but we will just attach the all documents distributed to the all countries overnight, and so that then you could take a look at it overnight. Stefan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Secretariat and particularly Gustavo, who took all the questions and you returned them like the guys in Wimbledon. So thanks for that. No, also the level of detail. That's one first remark. Then I have a second comment. It would be, of course, interesting for us as council members to hear the agencies, if they have any comments to make on this work program, in particular the different steps and how the process was perceived by them. And the third point that we would like to make is actually a proposal, a textual proposal, in the light of the various comments that were made. We all know that the essence of our discussion is in the decisions. The rest may be forgotten very fast, and therefore we have consulted with some colleagues around the table on a possible addition to the decision. I can read it out slowly and then I can send it to William. The addition would read: the Council notes a need for enhanced transparency in the selection of the lead agencies and the recipient countries in the impact programs, requests the ad hoc working group on governance to take this into consideration in its work, and request the GEF Secretariat to share the reports of the completed selection processes for the lead agencies of the impact programs by 30th of June 2019, and provide the Council with a status update and report of the still ongoing selection processes. And then one point that, if I got it right, may not be needed: the Council also requests the Secretariat to present a short note explaining how the impact programs were developed for this work program by whenever. That's the two-pager that Norway and other colleagues were requesting, and I believe you said you basically have it and you will distribute it overnight. So in case, and that was the right understanding, we wouldn't need the last sentence of the decision. I sent the text right now to William, so that maybe you can beam it up. Yes.
Stefan, I just wanna actually wanna understand what that proposal means. Actually, the selection of the agency was already done, and that we are quite willing to share of all the process in terms of guidelines that are not issued to the OFPs as well as the agencies. And then we can actually document it. We have already documented and what kind of meetings has actually taken place for what. Are you asking something more than that? I just I'm not really clear that what exactly that you are asking about this an ad hoc governance group and what exactly that the ad hoc governance group, working group will do.
Thank you. Apologies if I wasn't clear. The proposed text that we read out and sent to William and Gustavo is actually trying to capture the discussion that we had so that it's not getting lost, that we have it in the decision. Some of it may already been documented. You had, if I understand it right, extensive consultations and interactions with the agencies, which is something that, as a council member, we have not been part of, and it would be useful for us to understand, for future purposes, how these interactions happened. And the same goes with regard to selection of projects in the countries. There, to a minor extent, because there were some communications with the operational focal points, the criteria, to my knowledge, have not been clear to all of the recipients. But just because of that, it would probably be helpful to recap the process. And regarding the ad hoc working group on governance, it's just to point out to an issue that has taken up some time this afternoon, where we had, I believe, fruitful discussions, and that the working group is reflecting that in its future work.
Yes, so I just got your text, which I think is very elegant, and that's perhaps why I'm not fully picking up exactly. So just a procedure. So you're requesting that we share the reports of the already completed selection process. So where a report for how we got to this stage, correct?
Correct, okay. Correct. Assuming that there's no confidential information included there.
Well, but that's a point that we can bring to you, because certain agencies didn't want this information disclosed. So that's a point that we can bring. You gave us some time to see which information they would feel comfortable, because this was a proposal that they wrote. And those that did not get it, may have issues, but we can bring that up with you. But what I'm asking is that this is not in prejudice of the decision to move forward with the programs now, because they all depend on the decisions that we're taking. Okay, all right, okay. And secondly, on the one that hasn't been done yet, which is the cities program, you were requesting that we report how the process is undergoing, right? Okay.
So it can be done. So I just want to maybe be very clear about what we were discussing. We are all in full agreement in the transparency and also the information sharing and selection that the selection be made based on the professional criteria. What I think is very important is that if the council needs to be involved in this selection or not, my understanding is that you trusted us to do it. So what you are looking for is that just the transparency of that process itself. Am I right on that? Okay, so that so So in terms of the decision, that I think I got that what you are looking for. So we will work on it overnight. You will get it tomorrow morning, and then we can continue to work on that in terms of ongoing selection that of the lead agency on cities. But then with that understanding, am I asking you to approve the work program? I think it's very important for me to know that where we are on this entire process.
Thank you very much. I would prefer to see the decision final and then approve the work program.
But decision what? But decision what? Well, actually, that there is no decision in a sense that okay, we share that process, the document. I mean that document of describing what have been the process for the entire year, right? And then we can share with you this bunch of the actual notes sent to the OFPs as well as the agencies. We can share as much as possible what was the selection committee discussion and who are participating in it and what is their role. But this is more like to make sure that you get the fullest information, and this should not really affect that your decision to adopt the work program or not. Apana?
I hope to be useful. So, as I understand it, nobody in the council is making a case that the council should be involved in the selection of the lead agencies for the IP or for selection of countries to be covered under each IP. That is not what the sense that I got. But I am concerned that a large number of the council members spoke about the need for greater clarity and transparency from the side of this process, which has already happened. So that is for me a bit which is a matter for concern. And it would be good, I think, for the council's own credibility that we have some additional information before us on how the lead agencies for IP were selected by the GEF Secretariat, how the countries were selected, how the integrity of the process was maintained, and then we can consider the work program. Otherwise, we would be talking about something and deciding something else. That may affect I think the strength of the decision and the full support that you need for taking the work program forward. So I think some additional information on processes alone is required. I don't think that is going to result in the committee or the council saying that, this and not this should be the lead agency for IP. I don't see that kind of a outcome. But I'm looking for further clarification and information which help the council to satisfy itself as to the processes that were followed and then come to a conclusion on the work program. The two are interlinked because these issues have been raised while considering the work program. That is why.
There are actually that maybe few questions that I hear, the few concerns I hear, that okay, that you hear, I hear with my sadness and surprise that some countries are actually that feel that they are in the dark, and I really would like to know that because we thought you received every information or the notification, and then in case that you didn't hear from either from agencies and from us, that we also need to know that where that communication is broken. That's one thing. That sometimes that we also received that the comments that why I am not selected, and this is another set of question because based on some the criteria that we cannot really select everything, that then we have to kind of draw the line that of who will be in, who will be out. So I think that these are two very different questions, and I just try to understand that where that your the comments, what exactly your comments are trying to address it. That and we need to actually think that what I could really give you to convince you that this is the right question, the decision to take. I just see a flag from Stefan, and also is that Ben? Yeah.
Thank you, Naoko. Thank you also, Aparna, for trying to be constructive, and I believe you were. I think in general terms, the council was supportive of the work program. I have not heard anybody saying we don't, we disagree with parts of it. There were questions, there were some concerns raised, but nobody switched on a red light and said no, or at least a partial red light. So in that respect, you're right. There is not anyone wanting to block a decision on this work program. Actually, quite contrary, it is welcomed because of the various points that were raised by colleagues around the table. But the point that Aparna made, that because there is still some uncertainty looming, at least amongst some council members, I believe. Considering that, it would make the decision stronger if we had, but since we didn't, once we will have a 2-pager that lays it out, once we have a decision that would say, yes, there will be, as appropriate, respecting all confidentiality matters, information on how the selection process happened, and especially how it will be lined up for the last of the impact programs. It would strengthen the decision because it would show that it's a maybe not prior, but post-informed consent. And it certainly would make the decision then much stronger, because you would have then all the council members and hopefully also all the agencies and observers, CSO organizations supporting it. In that respect, we believe it's helpful to strengthen the message. It's not about blocking anything or taking pieces out of the work program.
Okay, I understand better. May I call on Ben?
Yeah, just building on that, I think broadly I'm sort of agreeing with some of the aspects that Stefan said, which is that clearly that there's a lot of support around the council for the work programme, so I don't think that is in doubt. And I think the issue, which is clearly something which people have raised, is around the transparency and ensuring that is very clear. Those are two separate things, as I think you raised. And I guess as someone new to the council, it'd just be useful to understand whether that's something which has to be put into the same decision, or whether potentially there's sort of two decisions here, one which is basically approving the work programme, which I think there was broad consensus around, but also having a very clear decision around the transparency process.
I read it. I just read it. There's nothing more than this. I just read it. So, isn't this sufficient? Right, but there won't be any more than this.
All right. Nobody wanna raise the flag, so somebody needs to make a way. Okay, that it's one kind of a proposal coming from Swiss chair, and there is also another kind of suggestion that could we also think of breaking those two in two different decisions. I think that we slightly prefer that two decisions, and if that works that for you, and that's the way I think we want to go ahead. Does it sound okay with you? All right, so with that, we will make that decision, the second decision, but then we will approve the work program as it is. Of course, there are a lot of footnotes coming from chairs, and so with that we this session produce two decisions, right. Work program decision, and there is new decision of let us work on this transparency issue under the ad hoc working group. Stefan?
Hope I'm not scaring anybody. No, we agree. I think it's a good proposal, and as we all know, sometimes there are twins that are born on different days, and I take this one as a twin decision. So we look forward to the baby that comes tomorrow. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a wonderful, beautiful analogy. So with that, our work program approved, and then the second decision also approved, and we will write down to show you tomorrow, and then we will distribute overnight this document of the whole process, and as much as possible, that information shared with you. Thank you so much. Well, I'm so sorry that we exceeded that time by almost an hour and a half, but I think it was very useful that day, and so I hope that you can have a good night and ready for tomorrow. Thank you so much.